Donald Trump became the 45th President of the United States in January 2017. His election slogan, "Make America Great Again," became a central feature of his campaign. He had been a successful developer and became a household name with his TV series, The Apprentice. Several big names in American society, in fact, predicted that Trump had no chance of winning. However, on election night, Trump shocked everyone by winning a substantial majority in the Electoral College, 304 votes to 227. Throughout the campaign, he had talked a lot about putting America first and the forgotten men and women of the country. In his inaugural address, there was a strong emphasis on American nationalism. The various wars, fought over half a century in Korea and Vietnam, Afghanistan, had cost billions of dollars and achieved relatively little. By 2016, most Americans were tired of the never-ending wars, and Trump reflected that feeling better than most. In regard to foreign affairs, he aimed to withdraw the United States from various deals and alliances. As president, he believed the United States was better off operating as a sovereign, independent country rather than as part of a collective group. He threatened to withdraw from NATO. With the collapse of the Soviet Union 25 years earlier, Trump saw little need for NATO and the huge costs involved. As a result, his relationship with European allies was often strained. He withdrew the US from the Paris Climate Accords as he believed the accords damaged US interests. Later, he withdrew the United States from the World Health Organization, claiming that it was in favour of China. His unpredictable tweets were intended to keep other countries on the alert and not to take the US position for granted. However, that approach often led to a lack of consistency in foreign affairs, and the president was often in conflict with his own senior advisors and sacked many of them. He held strong opinions and wanted to follow his own instinct as president. He reduced sanctions imposed on Russia by the Obama administration for its takeover of the Crimean Peninsula. He met President Putin in Helsinki in 2018 and accepted his word that Russian intelligence was not involved in the 2016 presidential election. Putin was actually mainly opposed to Hillary Clinton becoming president. Russian agents had hacked the National Democratic Committee in an attempt to damage Clinton. As US Secretary of State, she had strongly criticized the 2011 Russian election results. She condemned them as dishonest and unfair, and her criticism is believed to have led to protests on the streets of Moscow. Later, Special Investigator Robert Mueller found no evidence that linked Trump to the Russian involvement in the election. The president also had a difficult relationship with the FBI. They produced a report which accused him of sexual misconduct and implied that he could be blackmailed as president. The report was also leaked to the media, which damaged him as president. An investigation later showed it to be false, and afterwards his relationship with the FBI and media remained hostile. He sacked the FBI Director James Coney and later branded the media as fake news. Donald Trump also took a strong pro-Israeli stance in foreign policy in line with the wishes of his evangelical base. He moved the US Embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in December 2017 and recognized it as the Israeli capital. He also recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Trump also relaxed criticism of Israel in relation to its housing expansion program in the occupied territories. In fact, Israel continued to build and expand during the Trump years, and this further damaged US relations with the PLO and with the Palestinian Authority. These moves, in fact, reversed decades of US policy which had refused to recognize territory conquered by Israel. However, the president still hoped to bring peace to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, led a delegation to find a solution. They proposed a two-state solution whereby the Palestinian population would have their own enclaves in the West Bank. All Israeli forces would be withdrawn from the area. $50 billion would be invested to boost the Palestinian economy in what became known as a Peace to Prosperity plan. However, Palestinian refugees would have no right to return home, and they rejected this plan as it failed to tackle some of their fundamental concerns. As a separate matter, however, the Trump administration also developed the Abraham Accords, whereby several Arab states recognized Israel for the first time as an independent sovereign state. The combined effect of these decisions was to strengthen Israel and weaken the Palestinian position. Elsewhere in the Middle East, Trump ordered the US aerial attacks on Syria in April 2017, just a few months after he came to office. This was a response to President Assad's use of chemical weapons in the civil war there. Later, the next year, in December 2018, he ordered a total withdrawal of American troops from Syria. This was in line with his campaign promise, but it was considered a brutal decision as it left behind American Kurdish allies who were exposed as a result. The Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, strongly disagreed with the President on this matter and resigned in protest. The United States Congress also condemned the President's action. The following year, Turkey invaded Syria, taking advantage of the weakness of the Kurdish position. Turkey was determined, actually, to ensure that the Kurds did not set up their own independent state, which could destabilise Turkey. During the election campaign, Trump condemned the Obama deal with Iran and signalled his intention of pulling the US out of it. In January 2017, Iran tested a nuclear missile for the first time. In May 2018, Trump pulled the US out of the Iran deal. The following year, Trump imposed sanctions on Iran, but failed to achieve agreement on a better deal as promised. Donald Trump also accused China of currency manipulation and stealing intellectual property rights from the United States. He started a trade war with them in January 2018, placing tariffs on over 800 Chinese imports. This action was intended to protect American jobs. However, it proved largely counterproductive as China reacted by placing tariffs on American farm products, thereby damaging Trump's re-election prospects. Relations with China further worsened at the end of his presidency as Trump blamed China for the COVID-19 plague, which further damaged his re-election chances. In relation to trade, Donald Trump had been highly critical of the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement over the years. He believed it should be scrapped as US jobs were being lost to Mexico as a result. NAFTA was originally a trade agreement between the US and Canada, but later included Mexico during the H.W. Bush administration. It was eventually signed into law by Bill Clinton in December 1993. NAFTA greatly expanded the American market for big business, but it was also a drain on American jobs to Mexico. Trump capitalized on this situation during the campaign and focused on the huge loss of jobs across the border to Mexico, and he promised to scrap NAFTA if he was elected. As president, he did replace it with a new treaty known as the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. The new treaty was actually kept most of the NAFTA framework in place. However, there were a number of changes which aimed to protect American jobs, especially in the car industry. The car industry in Mexico was forced to implement more favourable laws for trade unions to raise the minimum wage, etc. Also, American farmers were also given greater access to the Canadian market. Overall, the New Deal was an improvement on NAFTA, but was not as big a change as Trump had envisaged. In relation to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Donald Trump also withdrew the US from this deal set up by Obama. This was a proposal by Obama to create a free trade area around the Pacific Basin. It was intended to thwart the influence of China. However, the idea became discredited during the 2016 election when both Trump and Clinton opposed it. However, the other countries involved went ahead with the deal in a reduced form. The United States also had a difficult relationship with North Korea during the Trump presidency. Kim Jong Un was determined to develop nuclear weapons. Obama had developed a policy towards North Korea which he called strategic patience. By that he meant that the United States and South Korea would work towards a peaceful coexistence with North Korea. North Korea was given incentives to avoid the development of nuclear capabilities. Economic sanctions would be reduced if they cooperated. However, Trump rejected this policy as too soft. He believed in playing tough with North Korea. At first he attempted to get China to restrain North Korea, but this approach failed. North Korea ignored the president and tested its first intercontinental ballistic missile in 2017. Trump was angered by this and said that if North Korea threatened the United States, they would be met with fire and fury, the likes of which the world has never seen. There was also hostile public exchanges between the two men. He branded Kim as Little Rocket Man. However, behind the scenes, things were somewhat different. Kim wrote 27 letters to Trump, and in June 2018, they met in Singapore summit. They agreed on a number of guidelines in regard to security arrangements. Trump agreed to stop provocative military exercises and to reduce military support for South Korea. However, the US Senate refused to back such action. Trump and Kim met again in Hanoi in Vietnam in February 2019. By then, there was a strong friendship between the two men, but the talks broke down mainly due to Trump's inability to carry through on his previous commitments. North Korea remains a communist dictatorship and continues to be of concern both to America and to the international community. Donald Trump's response to COVID-19 probably cost him the presidency. His main fear was that it would damage American business, so he tried to minimise it and ignore it as much as possible. However, governments all over the world closed down millions of jobs in an attempt to fight this virus. There was a fearful atmosphere in the early months of 2020 as scientists and analysts predicted countless millions of lives. Trump eventually fell into line with this international practice, but it was seen as too little too late. By then, tens of thousands of Americans had died. On the positive side, however, he approved a massive multi-billion investment in medical research to develop a vaccine. Billions of dollars were also set aside to support unemployed workers in America. However, the vaccine was not scientifically approved until after the 2020 presidential election, and by then the president had caught the disease himself, and although he made a rapid recovery, the media projected the event in very negative terms. Donald Trump appointed 3 judges to the American Supreme Court: Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett. In doing so, he changed the course of American history. A couple of years later, the historic case of Roe v. Wade was struck down in June 2022. This decision had the effect of banning abortion in many states in America and restricting it in others. In the long run, this will probably be Trump's biggest impact on American history, as new laws affect the lives of millions of people in the future. During the 2020 election campaign, the New York Post reported that the Hunter Biden scandal. This is a scandal involving his opponent, Joe Biden. However, the story was closed down by the major media outlets, which damaged Trump as a result. Had the story been properly told, it could have defeated Biden. That, combined with the impact of COVID-19, caused Trump to lose the 2020 election. He consistently protested against the coverage of the 2020 election and never accepted the results. However, his claims of a stolen election were not based on reality and encouraged a crowd to attack the Capitol building on the 6th of January 2021. However, the legal responsibility for such actions lies with the individuals themselves. Donald Trump has been accused of taking classified documents from the White House, although previous presidents have done the same thing. He has also been a very controversial figure, both loved and deeply disliked. He was impeached on 2 occasions, but both attempts failed. He is the first private citizen to win the presidency and therefore sets an alarming precedent for the future. His changes to the Supreme Court have changed the course of American history. His use of Twitter has made the traditional media look out of date. So Donald Trump has a lot of powerful enemies both in politics and in the media. However, he still retains a powerful support base in the country and is the leading contender for the Republican nomination in 2024.